All right, Steve Matthews, thank you for joining me today. We are live on YouTube and Facebook,
Oh my
and
gosh.
this is part of a crazy experiment that I'm running for the month of August. I'm going live on both of those platforms every weekday of August, and
Okay.
that's assuming everything goes well. And then if not, I'll do my best to be on live at least for a few minutes every day that I can. So before we jump into everything else, just wanted to remind everybody that I will also be live tomorrow at the same time, actually 1 p.m. And tomorrow is the most scary thing I'm doing in this whole thing because I actually don't have any guests lined up. It's just going to be me going live, answering questions that have been submitted to me for that live stream. And those are questions that I've received from CE students and other questions that I've received of late from some realtors that I think are really interesting and compelling right now, given what's going on in our market. So that's what I'll be doing tomorrow. I have known Steve. Steve, I was trying to think about this. When did we meet? It's probably been 15 years.
2005.
Okay, so 20 years.
2006. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in there, 20 years ago. So, and even back then, I have to admit that it was fun for me to sort of make fun of your age because you are a little bit older than me. So,
Well,
and you've always been very good
you're
spirited
younger
about
than
it.
my youngest child.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, you've always been good about it. You've always kind of had fun with all of us who liked to joke with you and stuff. But yeah, the whole time I've known you, I've known that you've been in the real estate business for a very long time, and you've been in the business for roughly 47 years. And I am 48 years old. So I only like to think about that you were already figuring out this game of real estate when I was still, trying to learn. I think by then I could walk, but probably was still in diapers, just knowing my progress on things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's strange to think that I could have been changing your diapers.
I'm glad that wasn't the case because that would make
Me
this
too.
live
Me
stream
too.
extra
Yeah.
awkward.
Oh my
But
goodness.
no, so recently you and I were at a realtor event and we got sort of talking, and I was asking you a few questions and you were telling me about some of the history in our business. And I just found it to be absolutely fascinating. And so what I'm hoping for today is that we can talk about a few of those things that we discussed. And then we didn't really get to finish that conversation then. So I'd like to finish that conversation. I have a few other topics and questions that I sort of want to ask you about, but this is fulfilling something I've wanted to do for a while. I've always felt like we need to hurry up and get Steve on video and get out of his head all this knowledge and information
Before it's
before.
too late.
Yeah, I mean, before it's too late. You knew where I was going with that, right?
Yeah. I haven't got much time left, Cody. So
All
let's
right.
go.
So Steve, tell us just a little bit about your history and background, just really quickly,
All right.
where you started and sort of some of the highlights of your career.
So, in 47 years, you can imagine I've worked at a few real estate companies, and some that have come and gone. But I started in 1978 in Grand Junction, Colorado. Got my broker's license there. I actually started teaching in 1980, teaching real estate. I found that really I enjoyed that. Was a manager for. I got my broker's license in Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and was a broker for Merrill Lynch Realty. They dabbled in real estate for a time, and managed down in Phoenix. And then I was a regional trainer for ERA and a regional director or service manager for Remax of Texas. Came here to Las Vegas to run the Coldwell Banker when Coldwell Banker sold the franchise to a private party. Came here and was the general manager. And then for a time, I was actually the regional director for Keller Williams in Southwest when they first started franchising. That was an interesting experience as well. Anyway, so now I'm with EXP, and I was a manager with Prudential for a time. I've been with a few real estate companies.
Yeah, no, I've heard a little bit over the years of knowing you. You've told me a little bit about some of those experiences that you had, and
Yeah.
definitely have a lot of experience in this business. And so that's what we're hoping to tap into today. So let me just tee this up with what kind of prompted our conversation that I was mentioning before. Last year, the National Association of Realtors, they did a settlement in a lawsuit, and it
Yeah.
was sort of a big deal. It made national headline news, and we even had the president of the United States commenting on it, commenting incorrectly, but he was commenting on it. And it was it was kind of projected to change our industry a lot. And interestingly, it has only changed it a little bit. But one of the changes is that this word co-op is now a 4-letter word in the real estate business. It's like we're almost not even allowed to say co-op like we had before. And just for those viewing who might not know what a co-op is, it's how it used to work, is that the listing agent would negotiate a total commission with the seller. And then from that total commission would pay a cooperative broker a commission. And so that commission for the buyer's agent would come out of the listing agent's commission that he or she had negotiated with the seller. And that co-op was advertised on the MLS. And now that is not allowed to do it that way. We do it a totally different way. And so I asked you the question at that party. So how long have we had a co-op? How has it always been like this? Is it been like this for very long? And I loved how you answered that. So why don't you give us a quick little history from your perspective, Steve, of the co-op and kind of through today's timing?
Well, so it's interesting because back in 1978, when I got my real estate license, the definition of a client was the person who paid your fee. So because the seller paid the fee, even if I was working with the buyer, the seller was my client and the buyer was my customer. Now that doesn't compute very well because your affection is for your buyer, not for the seller that you might not have ever met. And your loyalty is to that buyer. And so there's this inborn conflict of interest.
Yeah.
That because you're supposed to be representing the seller. You're, as an agent, even though I'm working with the buyer, I'm a sub-agent of the seller. And of that other broker.
So even though it felt like you were representing the interests of the buyer, technically speaking, you really weren't. You were representing the seller only, right?
Legally, I was representing the seller only. However, they did a study, and of course, class action lawsuits bring about change, and normally they upgrade and upskill the business and the profession. But they did a survey and they asked buyers, what do you think the agent is to you? And they'd say, well, they're my agent and I'm their client. Well, that wasn't the law. So there was a class action lawsuit, one of many that have happened over the last 47 years. Surprisingly, we all know about the NAR settlement, but there have been a number of lawsuits over the years that have changed and have moved us on this what I call a trajectory towards transparency, because it wasn't transparent that that my client was the seller anyway. So in 1995. As a result of class action, they came out with the duties owed, which is where.
Before you jump into that, let me ask you a couple of questions. So, like, what about the scenario there where they feel like you're representing their interests? Would that buyer sometimes tell you things that then you felt like since you were representing the seller, you were obligated to share that with the seller, or would you try to still keep those buyers' interests close to the vest?
There was that conflict of interest because often if I had the listing, the other agent would say, well, my client won't go for this. Well, your client is our client. It's our seller. And so there's always this butting of heads. The loyalty that we feel as agents really is to the person that we're working for. Yeah. And although legally that wasn't supposed to be the case. So no, I tried to be very careful in the treatment of the client and the customer relationship. but
Yeah.
you can't help but be loyal to the person that you've been working with for several days.
Yeah. Okay, so you were mentioning the duties owed. So talk a little bit about how
Yeah.
that was meant to, did that come about because of these circumstances and it was meant to sort of change that?
It absolutely did. So, so back, it was in 1995, 94, 95 when the duties owed came out. And basically what it required was that you delineated your duties, the duties you owed to three different parties. The duty you owe to your client and who that client was, the duty you owe to the customer, that is fair and honest dealing with the public, and also fair and honest dealing with other agents. And so it started to try and create a little bit better alignment and a little bit more understanding about what the relationship or who your client was and your
That's really
loyalty.
interesting because, when I came into the game, the duties owed was in a different environment, right? So I understand what you're saying now about why the duties owed was created in the beginning, but that duty, fast forward to when I came into the game and there's a different environment there. And it has always felt a little bit like, why exactly do we have this form? So that definitely is shedding a lot of light on why we have that form. And also kind of an interesting thing that maybe not quite that detailed of it, but can be some conversation with the client about why we have this and why we want to make sure that everybody understands who's represented. So
Agreed.
just in the interest of time then,
Yeah.
when did this concept of a co-op come around where real buyer agency got started?
Well, back in 78, there was a gentleman in my office, and he was an attorney, Joe Sinclair. And Joe, as an attorney, saw this inherent conflict to begin with. And he said, we can't be doing this. This is not right. It's unethical. It's illegal. And so he actually came up with a buyer's agreement, so that there was this idea that you disclosed to the buyer and to all the parties that your client was the buyer. You were still getting paid by the seller, but fast forward to 1983, 85, and there was a friend of mine who started a franchise called Buyers Only. Was the name of the franchise, and it was an attempt to try and properly align this. Everything was out of alignment, and so the franchise it fell on its face within a year. It didn't make it because it was just too weird of a concept. So it's actually been around. This idea of buyer's brokerage has been around for a while, but the co-op. Gosh, I mean, the co-op has always been there until it was uncoupled on August 17th of 2024.
Yeah. So prior to the settlement, we had a buyer agency agreement, and it was out there. But I would say that very few buyers agents actually really used it. I don't know why that was. I've used it for many, many years, and so when the settlement happened and the changes were made so that you're required to have that in place before showing houses. It was not really much different for me, but has it always before the settlement, was it always sort of like that the buyer's agency wasn't quite as established as it would be with an agreement?
That's correct. And so actually, again, the next paradigm shift was in 2006 when the BBA came out, where you could actually have a buyer's brokerage agreement with your buyer. We think of it this way: when you list a house, you're listing a property for sale for a fee. But when you're working with the buyer, you're literally, when you have them sign a BBA, you're listing their money. You're listing their loyalty to you, and then you're also delineating everything that you're going to do to earn that fee.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 2006 that the BBA came out, and people like yourself, you were born into, as a realtor, you were born into the BBA, and so I remember specifically that when you didn't know that you didn't have to use the BBA, you always use the BBA, the buyer's brokerage agreement, that is, and the reason why us old school guys didn't use it was because 90% of agents didn't use it. So when you asked a buyer to sign the BBA, they would say, no, I can work with any agent and they won't make me sign this agreement. I want to have the freedom to move about, and if I'm not happy with the agent.
Yeah, it was actually funny because when I came into the game, when I was born into this, as you say, the BBA had an upfront retainer clause in it. And so since I didn't know that you didn't have to use the BBA, I also didn't know that you didn't have to collect an upfront retainer. And so for my first few transactions, I was doing that. And my brokerage thought it was crazy. The compliance gals were always like freaking out when I was bringing checks in and we didn't even have a file established yet for that particular transaction or client. So yeah, that was some fun time. So now you've also seen a lot of changes with the MLS over the years, have you not? Tell us how it used to be prior to everything being online.
Well, so first of all, we didn't have direct and immediate access to the MLS per se. We had this machine, this giant machine that sat on a table that was called a thermofax machine, and you could get a daily hot sheet. And it literally came out hot because it came through a thermofax and it was printed on thermal paper. And it would say, and all it had on it was the address and the price and a couple of details, bedrooms and baths and square footage. And that was it. And that was the way that you got your data. Now, you could get the MLS book, but that only came out every 2 weeks. And it was literally a book, and agents had to pay extra for it. And if you were a cheap agent, you just passed the same book around. You could tell the agents that were doing business because it was written on phone book paper, newsprint, and using the same ink. And so you could tell the agents that were doing business because their fingers all had black ink on them. You could tell, they were working that day. But anyway, but the MLS book, that you only got it every 2 weeks, which meant that by the time you got it, maybe that property was already gone.
This is something that you've explained to me in the past, and this is something I've explained to many, many realtors as we've been talking about the state of our industry and the way that agents today interact with brokerages. And it's actually one of the things that I share with people as to why the old brokerage model and a lot of the brokerages that are still out there today, to me, are a very antiquated model because they are under a different set of circumstances. And that different set of circumstances was when the brokers had total control over all of the information. And now that information is proliferated out there on the internet, and not just to agents. Like before, even the agents needed the brokers to get access to that information. Now, not only do the agents have it, but the general public can just go online and those things are syndicated out there, and you can find those things all the time.
Yeah, so it was pretty quaint actually, because you would put a picture of a property in the window of your office and hope that people would walk by and say, oh, that looks like an interesting property. I think I'll go in and ask. And so we used to fight for what they used to call floor time, because people would actually call in and people would walk in to the office to get information about houses. Yeah.
All right. So anybody who is watching live that wants to ask a question to this guy who has all these years of experience, please do comment there. And then if you're watching this on replay, if you comment, we'll still find a way to get back to you to answer your questions. So we'd still love to have those questions answered. And I also just want to put up here, if you want to reach out to Steve after this for any reason, here is his phone number. And let's see if I can add this fancy little thing here. Yeah, so there's even a QR code there. So you can scan this, that black and white QR code, not the one in the upper corner. That one's for me. But yeah, if you want to reach out to Steve, that is how you would do that.
And if you want to make an appointment with Cody, then right there, I'm going in the wrong direction.
You never know where it is on the screen. But
it's the QR code.
The purple QR code.
For his calendar.
Yeah.
To make an appointment, right? Okay.
Yep. I'll put the little directions up here so you can scan that QR code. It will take you directly to my calendar, and you can pick a time that's the most convenient for you. I do teach a lot of CE classes for free, And the reason that I do that is because for the last several years, I have been on a mission to try to make the environment for realtors' success be as good as it can possibly be. So early in the game, all of my trade secrets, the things that I thought differentiated me from everybody else, I'd hold those things really close to the vest. I didn't want anybody else to know those things because I didn't want them to be competing with me. But over the years, I've completely changed the way I see this business. I actually think that collaboration and cooperation amongst real estate agents is very, very important for our long-term survival against some of the things that try to put pressure on us or try to replace us. And so I am always willing to take a call. And if you're interested in that as a realtor, or if you're a client and have questions about the market also, you can use the QR code there, scan it, and make an appointment with me anytime.
Well, so here's the thing that I think really differentiates the way that we do business, Cody, and that is there's a scarcity mentality out there. There's a lot of agents who aren't having much success, and they try to hold everything in. But what we've learned is there's an abundance out there. There's plenty of business out there for everybody. There are some, and the more we share, the more we upskill the market and the profession. So it's,
Yeah.
you and I, that's why you and I are working together, because we kind of demand more from each other as well, right? We support each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've told my CE classes now for a couple of years that I was nervous to start sharing all this stuff with everybody, like I mentioned before, but I've never one time run into where I'm directly competing with one of those CE students for a listing or a buyer. Maybe it's happened and I don't know about it, but there's so much to go around. There's so much abundance, as you mentioned. The pie is so big that there's plenty for all of us to eat, especially because the number of realtors is down right now. So,
you know, it's interesting because I also teach continuing education, and I give secret sauce of what I do to negotiate that gets my offer accepted over somebody else's. And I share with them specific clauses that I use that make the difference, that tilt the scale in my favor. And sometimes it's little things, because price isn't always the issue. Sometimes there are other things. And I share that information gladly, but I also know that I have not yet bumped into anybody who has used that clause against me. So
yeah, no, it's true. There's plenty to go around there. So hey, let's hit a couple of the comments.
Okay.
Just I have a couple more things that I definitely want to ask you about that I think are pretty funny compared to how we do today. But first of all, we got Tyler Moore. Thanks for tuning in, Tyler. This is great. Cody Lewis and Steve Matthews. Wow. Thanks, Tyler. Glad that you could be on with us. Lacey says, so excited for this. So are we.
Oh, the Las Vegas gal. Thank you.
Jake tuning in. I think FTW is for the win, right? That'll tell you how old I am. I don't know if that's what that means. I think it is.
I hope so.
Lacey said, I love listening to Steve. He has such an amazing perspective. It really is true. It's why at that party, I was disappointed that I didn't get to finish talking with you. And that's why I've got a few more subjects here that I want to handle with you. And Tyler has another question here. And Steve, why don't you take this one? Would you have joined your current brokerage sooner if you knew about it?
Oh gosh, absolutely. You know, the fact of the matter is, had I known about my brokerage, I'm at eXp Realty, and had there been something like eXp back in 78 or in 88 or in 98 or in 2008, I wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be having this conversation, because I would have been retired and living the good life. Even been more blessed than I have been to date. But it's a very good question.
It's interesting, as I listen to you talk about the history of the market, Steve, I realize that the brokerage model that we are a part of now, and that we have built the Synergy community on top of, it probably would have been difficult in some of those different times of yesteryear. And so it came on the scene about when I think that the world was ready for it. And I definitely believe that it solves a lot of the problems we were talking about earlier, where the brokerage models are an antiquated model. And so let me just take a minute to just describe what Synergy Community is. And that's because, Steve, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, not just for all of your wisdom, but also because you are one of our members on the board of directors. So you're one of our directors. And our board of directors meets about monthly, and we come up with events, activities, and training that we know will be compelling and important for our realtors in our group. And we try to keep everybody on the forefront of information. Some of the stuff that we're sharing today is similar to what we try to share with our realtors there. And the reason that we do that is because in today's age where things are virtual and everybody's sort of living online a lot, it can sometimes feel very lonely. You can feel very alone. And so the Synergy Community is designed to help surround and insulate agents so that they don't have to feel alone. And so that's what we do.
Well, and also, Cody, because there's so much misinformation out there, it's important to be able to have a fountain that you can drink from, where you actually get some good information, that you get some facts, and you can get supported in your business.
Yeah, right? Let me bring up one more question here from Lacey. What is the best change in the history of our business? I think that's a great question. What would you say is the best thing that's happened that's made it be the best?
Well, first of all, there are two things. I think from a business standpoint, the shift of the business to where you and I are now owners of the brokerage. We share in the revenue of the brokerage, and the broker now serves us instead of us serving the broker. So I love that change in the business environment. But the best thing that's happened to the real estate industry as a whole is the buyer's brokerage agreement, this NAR settlement, which everybody they were wringing their hands over because they thought that it was going to be the death of the realtor, or that it was going to make it more difficult for us. It's actually made it easier and better for us. And now we have complete transparency, and it's really been a blessing for us. I think that's probably the biggest and best change that's happened in the business since 1978.
I totally agree with you. Before, there was kind of this weird, almost awkwardness where it was like, well, have you been working with another agent, and what's the extent of what you've been doing? And we have this code of ethics that we won't be trying to solicit each other's clients, but we didn't really know who the clients were. This way, I agree, is so much better. All right, Steve, I want to ask you about the contract. So I love teaching about the contract, and I know that it's changed a lot over the years. So I have a few questions for you about how that contract worked over the years, but tell us how it used to be versus how it is today.
Well, first it started out, it was on regular paper, but in order to make copies for everybody, you had to have this inky thing called carbon. You hear about carbon copies, and literally we laid a carbon sheet between two documents, and then you would write hard and to get it to go through. And after a while that carbon would be bad, so you'd have to throw it out, and you wouldn't know until you looked and saw that your contract didn't carry through. But it was a great day when the contract went on NCR paper, because then we were able to go to it was only one page, but everybody by law has to receive a copy of what they just signed. And so the pink copy went to the buyer, the white copy or the blue copy went to the other agent, the yellow copy went to you, and the seller got the white copy. And so everybody got their copy of it. When it went to and so it was one page, and it was actually a closing technique, because we would say, as we were writing the contract on the hood of the car, because that's the way we did business back then, we'd hand them the pen. This was our closing. Press hard 4 copies. That was our closing technique, because they had to literally press really, really hard to get the signature to get through to the 4th page. When it went to 2 pages, instead of creating 2 documents, they first started just printing on the back side, which meant that you you couldn't fill in the blank. You couldn't do it the same way going the other direction,
Yeah.
because it would put whatever you wrote on the back side. The other problem of that, of course, was that if you weren't careful, you accidentally and unwittingly were scribbling or doodling on your contract that might be underneath a bunch of other documents or papers.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting is, of course, I told you about the hot sheet that we had.
Yep.
With the information of the properties on it. And what you would do is you'd print that out, and you would take that around to show properties. If you forgot and left it in your car, it turned black because of the heat. And then you had nothing. So you were at a complete loss. What a difference it's been to be able to go digital.
So you mentioned
digital signatures.
Yeah. And you mentioned also to me that the buyer and the seller used to be face-to-face across the table from each other. Was that at the close?
At closing, we would sit at the same table. The buyer's agent and the buyer would sit on one side. The listing agent and their seller would sit on the other, and then they would sign papers in front of each other. And sometimes it was uncomfortable because there was a little bit of disagreement between the buyer and the seller, and having them in the same room together was not always the best thing. So
yeah, it's interesting because I just recently had a seller who was a little bit older than me. And she was asking me when she was going to do her signing at the escrow company, she asked me if she should bring the keys so that she could give them to the buyer. And so I realized, she sold a property a while ago, and that's what the procedure was at that time.
Well, and that's the other thing that we used to have. You would have close of escrow. You didn't have to give possession until close of escrow plus 3 days. And so you actually knew that you were closed before you had to give up the keys, before you had to move out. Nowadays, of course, you have to completely pack up, move out, even before you sign the final paper and close. Because we give possession at close of escrow, typically.
It's interesting because I sometimes think that we forget that somebody has to move out of the house and the next person has to move into the house, and that possession can happen, instantaneously upon the close, and there's always a little bit to work out. And luckily, we have really good forms that are, for both pre and post possession that I think are pretty good, and they work pretty well, and the clients seem to do okay with those things. All right, let me take a quick break here to mention just a couple of things. So we do have upcoming in the month of October for our Synergy community, we are doing our annual day of service that we do. And for the last several years, we have blessed the life of a veteran. And I'm talking about big, huge projects, $50,000 to $60,000 worth of value into their home. And this year is really cool because the recipient is a veteran named Bob. And Bob actually has a nonprofit organization to help other veterans. And so he opens his home as a place where veterans can go and meet and share with each other and support each other. And so when we saw where he was doing that, we looked at that and said, oh man, we can definitely make this be a lot better than it is. And so this year, the improvements that we're making they're very special because not only are they going to benefit Bob and his property, but they're going to benefit the other veterans that he's going to be having over there. And so, excuse me, in the description of this video, I have put 2 links. One is an Eventbrite link that will take you to the Eventbrite page for that activity. You can sign up there to come help us. You don't have to be part of our group. We as Synergy community, we sort of spearhead it for all of EXP Nevada. But any agent or even non-agent, we'd love to have you come support us on that day as a way to give back to the community. And then if you can't be there that day, and or if you are viewing this from out of state and you're not actually in our local Las Vegas market, there's another link for where you could go and click and make a donation. And we're trying to raise about $25,000 of cash so that we can buy some of these materials. And so far we've raised about 5,000 of that. And so we're still short of our goal. We got lots of time, but any little bit helps. And so anybody who'd like to contribute to that effort, we would greatly appreciate it.
I'll just piggyback on that and say, you know what? You and I have been very, very blessed in our lives. And because we've been so blessed, we have an obligation to bless others and to pay it forward and to give back to our communities that have blessed us so well. And whether you're with EXP or not, doesn't matter. Whether you're a realtor or not, come help us, come join and help us help this veteran and his nonprofit.
Yeah, everybody is going to have their turn of being the one that needs the help, and we hope that you'll get the help when you need it. So right now, that's Bob and the veterans that he serves, and so we just very much want to help him in any way that we can. Okay, I know you have a hard stop, Steve. So just for a few more minutes here, I have one more thing I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned to me before that there used to be same-day loan approvals.
Yeah.
So that sounds crazy. So tell us about that.
Okay. Well, so very early on, like in my first year, I started developing. Believe it or not, I barely had my real estate license, and I was developing. I was building houses, and I had a guy draw a floor plan out for me on what is called vellum. I took that into the building department. They approved and gave me my building permit that day. And then I went into the bank and said, this is what it's going to cost me to build this. And I would go in at like 9 o'clock in the morning. I'd say, I need this much money to build this property, to acquire the land and to buy, and because they would also loan on the land. And then I would walk out that afternoon with the money that I needed. It's all set up and yeah. So in just a very few days, I could go from the design phase to start of construction very quickly.
Yeah.
But so the final loans were also the same way, because banks, community banks, and some of these banks that have been gone away because of the CFPB or because of Dodd-Frank, those don't exist anymore. And that simple down home type of lending environment is difficult to find, and I miss it.
Yeah. So if there are any buyers watching this video, just know that those days of getting a loan the same day are gone. And yesterday, actually, I had on Carrie, a lender. We talked all about the different levels of loan qualification, loan approval. And so I encourage anybody watching this to watch that, because we talked about the mistakes that lots of buyers make, thinking that they're approved for the mortgage, where they're really only at the first or second level of approval and not all the way approved at the third level of approval. And what I always tell my clients is that when it comes to loans, until you hear that you are clear to close, until you hear that loan funded, there is always something that can come up. So you just don't know for sure. Okay. Well, Steve, I know you've got to run, and because you're going to be teaching some realtors, right? Is that where you're headed off to?
I'm teaching a class on ethics. I've got 150 agents that are getting ready to go on break, and they'll be coming back shortly. So I had somebody cover for the first hour.
All right. So I'm just going to put your contact information up here on the screen again really quick, just so that if there's anybody that wants to reach out to you and continue this conversation about how they used to do it when everyone drove around in wagons, then they can reach out to you and find out how real estate has worked through all of these years.
I'm not insulted by that, because it's true.
I do want to mention just one last thing before we jump off here, and that is that starting in the month of September, I am doing an Unbook Club, and I'll explain here in a second why I'm calling it the Unbook Club. I'm doing that together with Shelly Johnson. Steve, you know Shelly. She is
wonderful, an absolute, stayed at her house.
Yeah, she's an absolute beast in this business. She runs a mega team out of North Carolina and many, many other states. She and her partner, Craig, are just really great people. And so she and I are going to be doing this. The first book Unbook Club meeting is going to be on September 17th. So be on the lookout for all of the details for that. But here's why it's called the Unbook Club. It's because I know that realtors are probably not going to actually read the book. So we have said, look, we'll do the reading, we'll do the work, we'll do all the thinking. We will come prepared with the nuggets from that book that we can share with everybody else. All you got to do is show up that day, listen and participate in the discussion. And then if there's anybody who does want to read the book, I do really recommend this Buy Back Your Time book by Dan Martell. It is a fantastic book. It'll change the way you think about how you construct your day and how you get back as much of your time as you can, and how you value your own time and your own skill set. So that is something.
I love this. I'm looking forward to it. I think you could have called it, instead of Cliff Notes, you could have called it like Cody Notes or something, you know, because I don't like to take that time to read. I read too slow. So I'm looking forward to your book club, your unbook club, the Cody
Yeah,
Note.
well, hopefully you'll be there and participating in that. And Shelly and I have read the book, and we're both ready to discuss it. And so she
That's
and I are
exciting.
continuing to talk about some of the stuff that we'll be sharing that day.
Well,
All
listen,
right.
Cody, thank you so much for letting me come and visit with you today and spend a little bit of time. It's been
Yeah,
fun.
thank you,
Yeah.
Steve. Very much appreciate you being on.
And you survived it.
There's still a long list of things that I wanted to ask you about. So hopefully we can do that, even if it's just offline. But
Part
yeah,
2.
thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. Good
All
day to
right.
everybody.
Bye, everybody. See you next
Bye.
time.